Hello everyone, this is Sunil Rana. I'm again with my YouTube channel Easy365 Learning, where today I'll talk about the DNS records and how we can add domain to Office 365 tenant. So let's see what we have in today's session. We'll start by explaining the DNS records that we have in Office 365, including the purpose and type of DNS records that we have. Then we will cover how to add a custom domain in Office 365 tenant, verifying the domain ownership and creating required DNS records for Office 365. So before we talk about adding domain to Office 365 tenant, it is really important to understand what DNS records are and the type of DNS records that are used in Office 365. So if we talk about the DNS records, these are used to map the domain name to IP addresses and are leveraged to help route email and other network traffic to the correct servers. There are a couple of DNS records available, but in Office 365, primarily only 3 records are published, and those records are TXT records, MX records, and CNAME records. As it says, TXT records are used to store text-based information about a domain, and they are often used to verify the domain ownership or to provide additional information about a domain. And if we talk about the MX record, they are used to route the email messages to the correct mail servers and specify the mail servers that are responsible for accepting incoming email messages for a domain. And CNAMEs are used to create an alias for a domain name, and they are often used to point a subdomain to another domain name. Let's understand these DNS records through some examples. Let's take a scenario where an administrator requests for a custom domain from a DNS host, and that DNS host can be GoDaddy, HostGator, BigRock, or any other DNS host. So this person will create an account in GoDaddy or any other DNS registrar site, and once this person creates an account there, he will look for a domain. For example, in this case, he's looking for easy365learning.com. So if that particular domain is available, he can purchase that domain. Once the domain is purchased by the administrator from a DNS host, he will add this custom domain in Microsoft 365. And while adding this domain to Office 365, Office 365 will ask the administrator to verify the domain ownership. It will provide the administrator with a TXT record, something similar to this, and will ask the administrator to add that particular record there in the DNS registrar. And once the record is added there in the DNS registrar, it usually takes few minutes to hours for the records to get published across the globe. And once the records are published, the domain will get verified in Office 365 tenant. And that's how the TXT record is leveraged to verify the domain ownership in Office 365. Now let's talk about the MX record. As stated earlier, these records are used to route the email messages to the correct mail servers. So if you have added a domain in Office 365 and want to receive emails from an external source, you need to ensure that the MX record is updated there in the DNS host. Otherwise, the emails will not be delivered to the Office 365 user. So let's take an example where we have an external user who is on a Gmail server and wants to send an email to an Office 365 user. During the email delivery phase, it will do a lookup for the domain easy365learning.com based on the recipient email address and will send a query to the global DNS server. And based on the domain name, global DNS server will figure out that the public domain for this is GoDaddy, HostGator, or BigRock, and accordingly will send a query to them. Once the query reaches to the DNS registrar, it will come to know that the MX record for this particular domain is pointing to Office 365 and will accordingly route the email to Microsoft 365, and eventually the email will get delivered to the Office 365 user. So that's how the MX record helps in delivering the email to the correct mail server. And if we talk about the CNAME record, these are used to create an alias for a domain name and are often used to point a subdomain to another domain name. These are also required to set up autodiscover for a domain in Exchange server and should be created in the external DNS zone. There are a few services that rely on autodiscover, and one of them is Outlook client. So the Outlook client leverages the autodiscover process to fetch the connection string for the account that is required to be added in Outlook and automatically configures it. It also helps with unified messaging and active sync devices and is responsible for viewing FreeBSD information setting up out of office, and downloading the offline address book in the Outlook application. Now let's talk about the custom domain. So in Microsoft 365, a custom domain is a personalized domain name that you own and use with Microsoft suite of productivity tools and services. So it's a domain that you initially get when you first sign up for Office 365 tenant, and this domain ends with onmicrosoft.com. So instead of using the default domain that's provided by Microsoft, a custom domain allows you to use a more professional and branded domain such as @yourcompany.com. Now let's see how a custom domain is added in Office 365. So take this scenario where we have an administrator who is requesting for a custom domain easy365.com from a DNS registrar. It could be GoDaddy, HostGator, BigRock, or any other DNS host or registrar. So the administrator will create his account in any of these DNS registrar websites, and once the account is created, this person will look for this particular domain and see if it's available. And if the domain is available, the administrator will purchase the domain. Once the domain is purchased by the administrator, he will add this custom domain in Microsoft 365, and during the setup phase, Microsoft 365 will provide this administrator with some DNS records like TXT, CNAME, and MX records, and will ask the administrator to add these records there in the DNS registrar site. Once those records are added in the DNS registrar website, it usually takes few minutes to couple of hours for the records to get published across the globe. And once those records are published, the domain is added and verified in Office 365. And once that is done, the administrator can set the user principal name or the primary SMTP address for the users and change it from .onmicrosoft to the custom domain that is easy365learning.com. That was all about the theory part. Let me take you to the demo session where I'll show you how we can verify the domain ownership, create required DNS records in Office 365, and add domain to the Office 365 tenant. So I'll go to Office 365 Admin Center, that is admin.microsoft.com, and I'll go to the settings option, and here I'm getting the domain option. This is where I can create a new domain in Office 365. So by default, you see we have the OnMicrosoft domain, and this is the default one that got created when I first signed up for Office 365 tenant. So for adding a new domain in Office 365, I'll click on Add Domain, and then I'll type the domain name. I'll click on this option that says Use this domain. Now let's wait for a few seconds. Okay. Now it's asking me to verify my domain. So I can click on verify. And over here you see a window that says domain connect, and it asks me to connect to GoDaddy. So GoDaddy is a partner with Microsoft, and that's why it automatically picks the GoDaddy, right? It understands that this domain is with GoDaddy. As soon as I click on connect, it will automatically add all those records like TXT, CNAME, and MX record to my DNS registrar, and will add the domain in Office 365. But I don't want to go with that automated way. I want to go with the manual way of adding this domain in Office 365. So for now, I'll just cancel. I'll click on more options, and here are a couple of ways by which I can verify the domain in Office 365. So I don't want to go with the automated way. Under manual setup, I have a couple of options where it asks me to add a TXT record to the DNS registrar. If I don't have an option to add a TXT record, I can also add an MX record to the DNS registrar. I can also add a text file to the domain website, and this is recommended only if I have set up a website using this domain. For now, I'll go with this option that says add a TXT record to the domain's DNS records, and we'll hit continue. Now it wants me to add this particular TXT value there in my DNS registrar. I'll go to the DNS zone under GoDaddy website because that's from where I have purchased this domain. And here I can see all the DNS records are listed. I'll click on add new record and we'll choose the record type as TXT. Under name, I'll put @ symbol and the value would be this one. So copied it and pasted it here, and the TTL value, that's the time to live, will be 1 hour. So we'll just save this. Now it's updating the DNS records. It says your DNS record has been updated successfully. So you can see we have this record over here now. And if I want to see whether this record has been propagated across the globe or not, so what I will do is I'll go to a website that's MX Toolbox. And over here, I'll put txt:/easy365learning.com, so which is my domain, and we'll click on DNS lookup. Okay, perfect. So it's been propagated across the globe. This looks good. Now I'll go back to the Office 365 portal and click on verify. So it usually takes few seconds to verify the domain. Let's wait. Okay. Perfect. So this looks good. Now I'll click continue. The domain is verified in Office 365 now. To start routing emails through Microsoft 365 for this particular domain, Microsoft 365 wants me to add a couple of DNS records that are MX, TXT, and CNAME. So MX will be used to route the emails, TXT will be for spam and malware protection, and the CNAME will be for configuring the Outlook application. There are other records as well that you can find under advanced options, and these are for Skype for Business and Intune and mobile device management. For now, I don't want to go with these records, so I will just uncheck these records and will hit add DNS records. I again received this GoDaddy window where it asked me to authorize microsoft365.com to enable the services or add those records there in the DNS registrar. So I don't want to go with this option at this time, as I said earlier, so I'll hit cancel. And we'll go back to this page where it gives me an option to add the records. So what I will do is I'll copy these records manually from here and add to the DNS website. So I'll click on add new record and we'll choose the record type at MX. I can copy the host name or the name for this MX record, and priority will be 0. So I'll set this as 0. I can copy the value from here and we'll make it 1 hour. I'll save this particular record. So it's now updating the DNS records. Okay, I see the MX record there. I'll go back to this site and we'll go for a TXT record. Symbol will be again @ and the value would be v equals to spf1 include spf.protection.outlook.com -all, and TTL is 1 hour, so I'll save this as well. Okay, I see that TXT record here now. Now for Outlook, we need to set up the autodiscover or the CNAME record. So I'll click on Add and CNAME. The host name for this record would be autodiscover, and it will point to an address that's autodiscover.outlook.com, and we'll set the TTL to 1 hour and save. So that's how we add the DNS records manually in the DNS registrar website. Let me go back to Office 365 portal, and I'll just uncheck this option because I have added these records manually, and we'll hit continue. Okay, it says domain setup is complete, so we are good. And if I want to see if those records were propagated across the globe or not, so what I will do is I'll go back to this MX toolbox website, and over here I can just put mx:easy365learning.com. Okay, perfect. So you see it's pointing to Office 365 now. And if I need to look at the autodiscover, so I can just do autodiscover.domain.com, that is autodiscover.easy365learning.com. Okay, perfect. So that's pointing to autodiscover.outlook.com. Great. Now that we have the domain added to Office 365, so you will see it listed as a default domain, and you can make changes accordingly to the user's UPN or primary email address. So for example, currently my user principal name is ending with onmicrosoft.com, so I can just change it to my domain.com address. So I'll click on this drop down, I'll select easy365learning.com, and I can just make it Sunil Rana, add, and I'll make this a primary email, and we'll save the changes. So that's how we add the domain in Office 365 and change someone's UPN or primary email address from onmicrosoft.com or default domain to the custom domain. Thank you so much, guys. That was all for today. I hope you like it. Kindly do subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon so that you are notified about my upcoming videos. Stay connected and have a great rest of your day.